Welcome back to Born to be a Sports Agent, the podcast where we dig into the business of sports and give you the tools to succeed on and off the field. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Erin Ward, the founder of Evolved Experience Solution. Erin is a leader in helping teams and organizations increase revenue by optimizing the fan experience. From elevating game day atmosphere to using data and technology to creating moments that build lifelong loyalty. Her approach is transforming the way sports programs connect with their fans. I have to say, I think now is the right time to interview Erin because the House case settled on July 1. And my first question for her is, how and why did you create this company?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me on. Really excited to be a part of the podcast. Yeah, my background. So I started on the team side of sports in collegiate athletics, actually doing marketing, game presentation. I worked for University of Arizona, Stanford University, WashU, and St. Louis, heading up those departments. Was very involved in community relations at Stanford, as well as produced all of the football games, men's basketball games, and oversaw the entertainment as well as the marketing for those sports, and then was recruited by the Atlanta Hawks, moved to Atlanta, worked there for several seasons, got to call playoff games, so was part of their Eastern Conference Finals run, was involved in a lot of different really cool components, was their first Tinder night, did a lot of special marketing. We produced, I think it was 14 shows. So we actually brought in Atlanta artists and they did halftime pregame and some integrated media with it. So everything from 2 Chainz and Migos and Lil Yachty and T.I., pretty much all of the Atlanta greats rolled through, and we got to produce that. And while in those roles, what I realized is there's a lot of opinions about entertainment. It's very subjective. And unlike marketing campaigns, there weren't a lot of metrics or KPIs that you could tie to it. It was really just, we think people like it or we don't. And, that information wasn't coming in at a cadence that you could really act on it. So you have 41 home games in the NBA season. Sometimes you can have 10 to 12 games in a single month, but you weren't getting data for 2 or 3 months after. So it really left a lot on the table in terms of how you could make quick pivots and changes. And I've got a data background. I'm a pretty big data nerd and like to look at the why behind it and the analysis. And so I started really creating this concept of how do we get real-time insights from our guests and how do we enhance the analytics so it's something that the game operators can really utilize, the game day leadership as well as the athletic leadership can utilize. And hence the company was born in 2017. I left the Hawks. I started Evolved Experience Solutions, and over the last 8 years,
Okay,
we
so,
have
so the name of your company is Evolved. What's it called?
Evolved Experience Solutions.
Okay, all right. Keep going. So
Yep.
exactly what do you do at Evolved Experience Solutions?
Yeah. So we work with teams, leagues, brands, mostly in the sports and entertainment business. I think in the last 8 years, we've got over 100 clients in our portfolio, but we really look at how do we understand the guest experience? And we have a couple different ways we do that. And then how do we optimize revenue? Because when a guest is having a great experience, they spend a whole lot more at the game. So that incremental revenue stream is something that hadn't been managed before. Satisfaction is directly tied to spend, and we're able to pinpoint that and give teams a lot of insights surrounding that, but also give them a lot of feedback on things that they might overlook because the people making the decisions about the experience typically don't buy a ticket and go through the experience themselves. So they have some blind spots in terms of what that looks like. But really focusing on everything from arrival to entry, customer service, concessions, wait time, cleanliness, efficiency, layout, and then the entertainment as well. So we call those the moments of truth.
Mhm.
And depending on how they're executing, we can help focus on the things that matter most to the guests and eliminate many friction points because you can't get rid of every friction point, right? Like you can't
Right.
control the weather, you can't control traffic usually. Like there's a lot of things that are beyond the institution's control, but then there are a lot of things that get overlooked because it's always been that way, but it doesn't have to be that way. So we hone in on the action items, the things that you can make quick pivots, but then also the longer term capital investments that you'll want to make to both like increase your guest experience and then optimize your revenue.
So do you have some kind of a software that does this? I mean, how does this work? How do you gather?
Yeah, great question. So I built a software tool. I have an amazing team, way smarter than me when it comes to that. And our system architect has really designed a tremendous product that allows us to capture in real time. So we actually deploy the survey during the event. Guests are able to engage with it. They provide their information, and it's usually about a 6 to 10 second lag from when they enter information to when the client is able to view it on the portal. They can then literally act in real time. So we have a fan experience audit, but then we also have the guest assessment tools. So that's asking the fans. The audit is more like a secret shop. So it's figuring out, are your staff executing in the way that you've trained them to? Do they smile? Do they say hello? Do they scan your ticket properly? All of those things are really critical. But if they know Jill, our supervisor, they're going to smile. They're going to do their job excellently when Jill walks by. But when Erin comes in, they don't know Erin. You may or may not get that same experience. So we audit that to look at execution. That is also in real time so that teams are able to act on it, go coach team members up. I've got some crazy stories I can share about like effectiveness of that, but then also the assessment piece. So you're able to see what guests are liking. And we've had teams identify that audio banks were out in parts of their arena because the data came through and people in the upper level couldn't hear anything. Their scores were so low. They were able to reboot the audio in the middle of the game. So there's real things you can act on very quickly. But think about that. If you literally can't hear the PA announcer, what kind of an experience are you having, right? Like you've paid this ticket to come to a game. Those are things that you can flag early and fix. Versus some of the bigger things like, hey, it's really hard to move around the concourse. And that's a bigger challenge. And so those are things that maybe long term you want to start making adjustments on.
So you're actually giving this data to them in real time, and then they can make the adjustment as the game's going on?
They can, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then after the fact, we analyze it. We give them like key highlights. Now, not all teams are as proactive. I mean, we have a range. We have a couple clients who are in the college space, and their game producers literally have this up next to them, and they're running it and watching what their guests are liking, and they're adjusting their show like on the fly. They're super engaged and proactive. And then we have other teams that, take a look at it the Monday after the game and kind of use it before their next home game, but the data comes in immediately. So it's really designed to be actionable. I was at an NBA game, and one of our audits, I was there that game, but one of the other auditors flagged that a concessions worker used profanity with them, like was very, very vulgar. And because it got put in the audit and got flagged, the staff were able to go and relieve that staff member, the managers relieve that staff member of their duty, in real time to avoid it happening to other clients, right? So it can catch and flag things that otherwise would just fall through the cracks, but the guest isn't necessarily going to tell you that it happened. They just won't come back, right? It's like
Yeah.
1 in 24 guests who have a bad experience will tell you. The rest will go tell everyone else. They'll tell their best friends, their parents, and all of a sudden now your brand is suffering because you have a negative stigma around the experience.
Wow. And you didn't even, and you might not, as the leader of an institution, even realize this is what's
Mhm.
going on, right?
That's right. Yeah. And that the blind spot can cost you a lot of money, not just in ticket sales, but also when people come, their guard is already up. They're expecting a bad experience. And when people are guarded, they're much less likely to open their wallet. And that's what we've really looked at too, is how do you start to measure the impact of a good experience on how much people will spend?
Well, how do you define fan experience, first of all? Let's just talk step by step by step. What is a fan experience to you?
Yeah, the fan experience is any interaction that the guest who is a paying guest or, I guess a comped guest as well, but the guest is having when they come to your brand. And so that could be at a hotel, at a restaurant. We work with all kinds of brands, not just sports and entertainment, even though that's our primary focus. But if we're talking at a game specifically, everything from when you park until when you leave and the moments in between are really what define how your brand experience went. And I think that the old school mindset is we're selling tickets, right? We're selling tickets to a
Right.
game. That's our revenue. But you're not. You're selling an experience. You're selling a moment. You're selling an opportunity for families to connect, for friends to have a laugh, to create memories that are going to live a lot longer. And that really goes into all of those moments of truth. It's not just what the team does. It's How long did you have to wait in line? Did you miss a key play because the bathroom line was too long? When you got into the bathroom with your kid, was it flooded and dirty and you really didn't even want to set them down? Or was it a really clean experience that made you feel comfortable being there? Those moments all really factor in, one, to your likelihood to come back, two, your promoter, your likelihood to promote it, but then three, and maybe the most overlooked, is how much you're going to spend when you're there. Because if you're having a great time and your kids say, hey, let's go get a shirt or let's go to concessions and get another popcorn, what we've found is that more often people are like, yeah, why not? Right. Like, and it makes perfect sense. Yeah, let's get something to commemorate this great experience. But if you're not having a good time, you're not. So when you think about the fan experience, it's really from when they arrive till when they leave, and every moment you can curate in between there.
Yeah. So based on your data and everything you've learned over the years, what's the most surprising thing you've learned about fans through your research?
Well, that is a great question. One of the things that consistently rings true is fans don't, if you ask them what do they want to see, they don't give you very good information. So one of the things that we've done is we've built a validated index set. So it's a very specific set of questions asked a very specific way to tap into how they feel about things. Because if you ask guests, what would you like to see more of at concessions? Inevitably, you see people say, we need more salad. We need more healthy options. I want some hummus with carrots. This was like, 10 years ago, a really big thing. So teams did that. They added, salad bars, they added hummus and carrot lines, they added other, fresh fruit options that completely went to waste because nobody purchases them. So while in their head, you ask your fans, what do you want? They say healthy options. When you go to a game, people are buying chicken tenders. People are getting a hot dog, right? Like, so a guest doesn't always know what they want or what they are missing out on, I think is one of the biggest takeaways that,
Hmm.
we've learned. And so depending on how many other venues they went to, their expectations are rooted in that. However, they do know what service and hospitality looks like from other brands. And so what we have found is when you raise your own standards, like a brand that we work with, it makes incremental improvements. Scores, satisfaction, and expectations from the fans go up because all of a sudden they didn't know what they want. It's kind of like the iPhone. 15 years ago, if you're like, you need a computer that fits in your hand, people will be like, that's ridiculous. Like, we don't need that. And then all of a sudden, people now can't live without it. It's like, oh, we're going to a sporting event. We don't need clean bathrooms. It doesn't matter. Once you get clean bathrooms, you better never take away the clean bathrooms because people will be like, what? These bathrooms are a mess, right? Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of teams and colleges in particular allowed their buildings to maybe not be updated as often. They didn't put the investments in. So, fans just sort of lowered their expectations. However, once they see what is possible, um, their expectations jump, right? Like they raise up a lot higher. And so one of the things that we found in the data is it's really important to ask questions in a way that will get at what a guest is experiencing, not what a guest thinks they want, because they don't always know. And that's kind of true across research in general. You can get some initial bits there, but a lot of times you're going to get false positives in terms of, oh, this is super important. So that's why we do a lot more with predictive modeling. Where we'll actually take all of the data that we get, we put it through a system, and we're able to say these factors matter most to all guests, these factors matter most to females, these factors matter most to season ticket holders and not. And you're able to drill in that way, as opposed to just asking them the question of like, what matters most? Because that actually rarely is the true answer.
Got it. So one of the questions, okay, so then the data, one of my questions to you is what data points or metrics do you look at when analyzing fan experience? And maybe we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but like for instance, I'll give you an example. I was so thirsty because it was so hot, and I was just hoping somebody was going to come down the aisle and offer me five waters because I didn't want to get up because I didn't want to miss any of the game. That didn't happen, right? But I mean, how do you put data in to say, you know what, everybody was thirsty in the entire stadium? How do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Right. And so there's There's a lot of factors. I mean, we look at 10 categories primarily. Five are entertainment based, five are guest experience based. So that's things like venue, cleanliness, arrival, entry, security. And what we know, from a venue standpoint, is there's some differences in terms of the nature of the fan and what they're looking for. So older guests really dislike waiting in line. They really dislike those friction points of time being taken away. They
Mhm.
dislike inconvenience. They will pay more to avoid that, right? And that's again where a lot of schools miss the opportunity to have an express lane. Like it's not just about you being a season ticket holder. You could literally sell an express entry pass similar to a TSA pre-check. And all of a sudden your guests are able to get in and some of your guests are happy to pay that so they don't have to wait in line, right? So there's things like that, like understanding what matters. The older guests also really, really dislike loud audio, right? That if they can't have a conversation with a person next to them, major problem. Your student section does not mind the loud audio, but they really care about the type of music that you're playing. So when you're thinking about music, a lot of leadership will just lump it all together. We have to change the music. That's not necessarily true. Your older fans don't really care what's played. They prefer the band over canned music, but if it's too loud, that's their beef versus the students, they want to make sure it's quote unquote good music. So you can really kind of play that line. Now, when we think about wait times, your younger fans are not as bothered by wait times because they're so engaged with their mobile device. However, now this is where it gets into the detail. If your cell service doesn't work, your younger fans have a much, much lower rated experience than
Mm.
your older fans who are less impacted by reception because they don't come there expecting to have a second screen experience. So those are kind of the nuances when you ask, like, what do we collect? We look at a lot of data points. It's a pretty robust 360 view. And we capture a lot of folks. This is the other piece of like, because we're capturing it in real time, we capture a lot of folks who are not already in the email database. So it's a great way to opt in and
Ah,
really gather new people because your post-game surveys, which is what a lot of teams rely on. This used to drive me crazy. Your post-game surveys, when the team wins, it's on average like 8 to 10 percentage points higher than when the team loses, but you may not change a single thing.
mm,
When we do it in real time, we mitigate the win-loss impact. The way our questions are asked, it mitigates the win-loss impact. We clean the data. Like there's a whole lot of factors there. But with that, we don't see any more than about a 1.5 percentage point swing across the entire season, regardless of wins and losses, which is a big, big difference because before you're getting these kind of wild fluctuations, but also you're getting a very different response rate. The type of person who answers a post-game email is either typically an older season ticket holder or
mm.
really angry. And so you're getting this skewed response versus people who are doing it at the game and it's just part of the experience. And I think that's one of the biggest differences is you're able to really capitalize on the different segments that are there and get a pretty representative perspective that's not just that single view of a season ticket holder and what they care about or what that perspective is. Because once you start looking across demographics, there are some substantial differences in certain components of the experience.
Oh, interesting. So, how do teams optimize revenue opportunities with this data?
Yeah. So, it's really interesting and it's actually really simple to start. You do the things that guests expect to be done well, you do them well, right? And that is often not happening. So that's things like cleanliness, that's things
Mm.
like efficiency, wait time, good signage, making it easy to get around the venue, making it easy to see where retail is, making it easy to see where you get in line. You lose a lot of sales when people vacate the lines, either because they're taking too long, because it's confusing, congested, it's not well managed. Your store might be crowded, but if you can make sure that your lines are well organized, well kept, and efficient, you're not going to see as big of attrition as if it's a complete, congested mess and people don't want to stand in it. Um, Making sure that it's well ventilated wherever the checkout lines are and that you have people comfortable and cool. Those things all make a big difference in terms of once they're in line, like how do you keep them in line and get the transaction? But then how do you upsell too? And part of that is customer service training.
Mhm.
Most collegiate folks, when I go through, if whether they're nonprofit or volunteer, whomever, they don't ask for an upsell. They don't say, hey, would you like to get a drink? Can I, did you want to add anything else? Things like that. So making sure that they're trained to do that, making sure that the experience is efficient and they're not missing too much of the game. But then the other pieces, like I mentioned, getting the rest of the experience right, because we know there's about a 42% upside in terms of incremental spend on merchandise. 42% is huge, by the way, right? That can be
Right.
17,
Yeah.
18 bucks per cap. And then anywhere from like a 12 to 40% upside in alcohol sales and about the same in food sales. And it varies wildly across leagues. NBA tends to see huge upside. College athletics can see huge upside as well, especially with college football. But actually making sure that they're enjoying the entertainment, that they're having a great time with the venue, all of those factors matter. And when they have lower experiences, we see substantially lower per caps and revenue tills because fans don't want to stand in line. They don't want to give any more money to this experience, which is not proving out the way they were hoping it would.
Well, what about people coming down the aisles with selling, whatever popcorn and drinks? I'm kind of baffled sometimes that they don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very specific bit. We see it, it just kind of ranges across, it ranges across venues. I think your experience at the game sounds like they didn't do it quite as much as some of the other ones do. That tends to be a pretty effective approach. And definitely something that most venues find to be pretty a good way to, sell and engage and service their guests.
And do most stadium people do that or not? I'm just curious.
I would say the majority, especially in big venues, football venues, it's very common. Baseball venues, it's very common. Arenas can be, a little less common. It just depends on sight lines because one of the big sort of risks with that, because oftentimes those are third party hawkers. They're not necessarily trained or kind of have the same service standards necessarily. They can block view, and that can be a real negative for people who spent a lot of money and now are consistently
Ah,
getting blocked by, a steady stream of hawkers going up and down. It's very interesting. In Japan at the Tokyo Dome and at some of the different venues over in Tokyo, they have beer runners, and they're women who have beer packs on their back, and they are probably every 5 seconds a different one is going up and down the aisle, and that's a very big part of the culture, right? But it definitely impedes your vision at times, even though they crouch down and things like that. You think about a ballpark where you've got perhaps a larger human hawking beer or peanuts up and down, even though baseball's a slower pace, you can miss a big play if they're standing there filling a beer. So there's definitely the service component in terms of, hey, we want to get this out to you, and there can be, revenue there, but keeping in mind that the revenue share may look a little different with those hawkers. Like that definitely varies by every single venue. So I don't know if that is necessarily as high of a revenue share as some of the other revenue streams. But just keeping in mind that they can block the view.
oh, yeah. So it sounds like there's a lot of things you have to balance because, like you're saying, there's younger people in the crowd, there's older people in the crowd, there's people with little kids in the crowd. So there's all these different, really types of people in your audience, right? And so
Right.
they might have, and so who do you exactly cater to? All of them?
Well, that's the interesting bit. And so um there's a whole lot of nuance that each venue, each team we work with, we really get pretty in depth in terms of what their audience specifically looks like, who their target market is. Are they building for the future? Are they servicing season ticket holders? Are they a family friendly event? So it's not a one size fits all, that's for sure. But there are definitely higher spend categories for some than others.
Okay.
Students in general don't spend as much, right? Like they're not necessarily spending their money inside, but you're cultivating a great experience for the students for the long term. So you want to make sure they have a lot of fun and they enjoy it, but knowing that they're not necessarily going and dropping extra money on retail or things like that at the games. First, aspirational families or more of your social fan who's coming with their friends might buy extra, go and have an additional beer, go up and get shirts because they think it has a really cool look. So you do have to consider your different markets, who your long-term fans are. But I think one of the big things is it's not mutually exclusive. It's not like we can make it great for families and it's going to be not good for everyone else. There's a lot of synergies, like I mentioned, with the audio volume. If you know what matters most to different groups, you can curate your experience so it really lands with different people. So again, like music type, less important to some of your fans versus music volume. So you bring the volume down so people can still have conversation, but you play music that your student section likes when you have canned music, right? And you mix in the band in different ways. So there's some different things. And then, everyone wants to be able to hear and understand the PA announcer. So that's something that applies to all groups. And just kind of understanding the biggest thing. One of the things we do hear a lot, concession quality is something that comes up a lot. Prices for concessions across the country are sky high. We're starting to see more and more of the value menu be introduced, which is hugely, hugely beneficial and impactful. And one of the things we flagged several years ago and continues to be true is fans get really mad when they have to pay $6 for water,
Yeah.
$8 for water when it's incredibly hot out, right?
Right.
I was at a college venue a couple weeks ago and it was 95 degrees. They had water fill stations and it was boiling hot. So it's like, well, we're not gonna use this water to fill up our water bottles. We have to go pay $6 for a bottle of water. That is like the biggest rub. So hot dog, soda, popcorn, water, schools pricing those reasonably, creating a value menu, even if it's just for those limited items, see
Mhm.
an huge, huge revenue upside when people feel that they're not being price gouged on those things. They'll spend more on gourmet sandwiches. They'll spend more on other things,
Oh,
but
interesting.
it's realizing the value, and that's what you get for what you pay for. When you pay $8 for a bottle of water, it's the same bottle of water you can get for 40 cents at the grocery store. That doesn't feel right. When you get the barbecue chicken sandwich from a local food place and you pay $16, I got to eat and I'd pay about that anyway. So this feels good. What I get for what I pay for. That's when you look at the menu boards and you start to say, like, hey, are we pricing to have the right psychology for our audience, or are we maybe overpricing things that we shouldn't and
Mhm.
losing revenue because they're irritated by that, which is a very, very real thing. I mean, one of our teams introduced a value menu partway through last year. This is an arena team. Their per caps went up. They actually saw more revenue from their concessions game over game. They saw a huge uptick in perceived value, guest satisfaction. I mean, we're right there in the data, so it was really cool to see. Within one game, they had about a 9.5 percentage point jump in fan satisfaction with their concessions.
Oh,
But
wow.
then they also saw increased revenue. And even though they had dramatically slashed the prices on a few core items, like I just mentioned, they kept their price integrity on other items. So there's a lot you can do. You can also do anchor pricing. So free refills cost a little bit more, but our perceived value is higher, things like that. So there's a lot you can do creatively, but at the end of the day, it's again creating a perceived value and then being efficient and friendly. So when people do get to the front of the line, they have a great experience, not a surly staff member who, makes them feel like their wait wasn't worth the time.
Yeah, gotcha. So, how do you think mobile apps, digital tickets, in-seat ordering are changing the fan experience?
You know, that's one I may punt on a little bit. So
Okay.
that came online like probably 10 to 12 years ago. I mean, when I was at Stanford and now a while ago, 2011, we were piloting in-seat ordering. Levi's Stadium came online in I want to say 2011, 2012, right? They had one of the first in-seat ordering. So it's not new technology, right? But the thing that continues to be a struggle is getting it right, getting the food to the right fans in a quick amount of time so it's still warm and serviceable. And venues have not quite mastered that. Even today, the mobile app and like the pre-orders, so you can go pick it up, works, but tends to have some challenges. So I don't know that I've seen it be hugely beneficial for the investment that teams are making. Like there's nothing in the data that's like, hey, this is the way to go, because not too many have gotten it really great yet.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so are there emerging technologies like AI, or biometrics that you think will define the future of the fan experience? Virtual reality.
It's really interesting. People play around a lot with that. So on the entertainment side, the Famous Group, they do some incredible stuff, right? Like they have done a lot of the halftime AR that you can see. They've done some really big, splashy, cool things that are second screen or that, make it look like the stadium's being taken over by Nickelodeon slime or that a giant lion is going to jump on onto the field. There's really cool, big investment type things. Is that going to really drive your incremental revenue versus what you're spending? Not necessarily. It's sure going to get you some social media traffic as people do views on it. But, the things that I think have been really impactful are like the live selfie cam. So instead of you needing to have cameras everywhere, Vixie has done that. I think Famous Group has a version of it too, but you're able to literally hold your phone, scan a QR code, and then your selfie that you're seeing is what goes up on the video board. And a lot of teams use
Wow.
that. Not new, probably came online 2 or 3 years ago at this point. So there's stuff like that that just make it easier, make it more controlled by the fan, which is really cool. Some of the technology though that I think is going to be most impactful that we're seeing have huge impacts on overall satisfaction are the walkthroughs at the security gates. So instead of having your standard mag, you actually have a walkthrough, which you may have gone through at some of the venues, but you don't have to take your stuff out of your bag, out of your pockets. You just walk through. And so there's a few different companies who have that. We can tell if we're looking at a client and it's a new season, we can tell if they've implemented that because their scores go up anywhere from like 8 to 10% as
Oh,
soon
wow.
as that's in place because you don't have a wait. You literally go right through. A few NFL teams have started, and the Philadelphia Phillies are playing with this too, but it's literally facial recognition tethered to your ticket. So after you go through this seamless security, you literally walk past a screen, it recognizes you, and they have a staff member right behind that says, "Welcome to the game, Erin." And it feels really creepy, but at the same time, it's super easy. Like you're through, there are no lines. And so that ingress moment, which can cause so much friction,
Yeah.
can hold up people's experiences, can delay, you know, if there's been, stories of concerts that just take a long time to get through, or shows have to be delayed, right? Like it's real life. And so investing in that kind of technology to get people in is amazing because now you have them in your building. You have them in a place where they can buy merch, they can buy concessions, they can take part in incremental activities. If you have kids zone or other things around, you want them to get in without any issue, right? So that's huge.
Right.
The walkthrough's huge. The other thing that we're seeing too is there's some menu board technology. So digital menu boards, they're putting in technology that can determine volume in terms of how many people are waiting in line, and they actually streamline the number of items that show on the menu board. And the reason they do that is so that it's a quicker transaction, because what happens is people spend so much time staring at the board and then they get up to order and then they're like, oh, which do I want? But if there's only, I think it's like 4 to 6 items tends to be the sweet spot. It makes it a lot easier and a lot faster. And so of course the other items are still available, but that just streamlines their efficiency in getting people through. It can also, there's been some like back and forth, but there's technology that can even determine, genders or other things of the people who are in line. Are they children? Are they adults? And can adjust the menus accordingly. So it's
Hmm.
kind of crazy what's out there, but I think the most return on investment is those that improve efficiency in terms of just getting people in and creating a more frictionless experience.
So that's like parking, ticket, you know, going through the ticket line, and then when they are at the concession stand, that it's very seamless, really, it sounds like, and good
Yeah.
service.
Yeah. And I'd add the restrooms are a really big piece
Okay.
because a restroom line can take a very long time. And again, you're missing out on the game, but you're also missing out on getting in line to get concessions. Because if you have to go to the bathroom and you want to buy concessions, you're always going to prioritize going to the bathroom and you may skip the getting concessions. So there you've just left more revenue. So things like, low tech, having an attendant pointing people forward, making sure all the stalls are stocked, making sure that there's no like inoperable stalls. That's huge because oftentimes there's a queue. If you've got some drunk fans in there, they may not notice open stalls. It can really just back up unnecessarily. But then you look at an airport, which does some great technology in terms of different indicators of what stalls are available, or even signage outside of the venue or outside of the restroom saying, here's how many you have, or go to the nearest, the next available bathroom is a 3-minute walk that way. So I think that there's some inspiration that can be taken from outside of sports to improve that experience.
Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest complaint you hear from fans about attending a live game?
You know, That's a great question. And it definitely varies across, but I would say it boils down into crowds and wait time and price or value, like in terms of friction points. So that can be pretty broad. It can encompass a few different areas, but typically those are the two biggest friction points of how much I'm spending
Mhm.
on various components. Because I mean, I'll get to that in a second, how much you're spending, but then how long you're waiting, and that can really impact value. And when you think about attending an event, if your tickets, let's say you have a family of four, your tickets cost $50 each, that's $200. You go and buy food for everyone, that can easily get up to 60, $80. And then parking can cost anywhere from 20 to, I saw $80 at a college football game recently to park nearby, right? So now all of a sudden for my family of four to go out, I'm spending $400 on the low end. That's a really big investment. So what do I get for that? What's that experience look like? How does it make me feel? There's a lot on the line there when you think about how often I want to come back when I'm spending that. If I do have huge wait times, if I'm missing parts of the game, if it's hard to get to restrooms, or if it doesn't feel clean, safe, welcoming, like those all matter a lot.
So, how do you think teams can improve the in-stadium experience to compete with the convenience of watching from home?
Mm-hmm. All the things we just talked about. No.
Okay, I
I
get it.
no, I mean, I think take care of the basics, and that's having good customer service, have good people in place to be efficient and friendly. Like that goes so far. That can make up for a lot of the infrastructure. And then two, take care of your building in the sense of like if you need to paint the bathroom walls, if you need to make sure it's clean, you know, decals and paint are very inexpensive. It's not necessarily that you have to completely renovate your venue. You can do a lot in some of the key spaces and places to really make it better. And take a look at your menus. Make sure that there's some affordable options. Some of the, best pro teams have kid menus. They have, a value option. And again, it's a psychology of what the family or the parent feels they're getting for what they pay for. Um, there's thresholds for everyone, whether you're in college or pro, and understanding what your market and what your fan base will tolerate is really important, and also understanding what their expectations are and how you can start to redefine it and make it better without them necessarily boycotting it to get that way, right? Like, so it's not they'll just always show up. How do you actually, invest in their experience and prioritize what they offer? It doesn't always cost a lot, right? You have staff already in place, let's say customer service, but are they smiling? Are they saying hello? Are they saying thank you? Um, I walked into a venue and the lady couldn't scan my ticket and she said, just show it to me. Okay, that's good. Go ahead. Like that's not a best practice, right? Like those
Yeah.
things are happening very often. But do you even know they're happening? Do you even know when there's friction points? So that's something too, just being aware of what does that execution look like and how is the people that you're paying to be there, how are they doing their job? And is it done in the way that meets the standards of your institution or not?
Yeah, and are they training these people? I mean,
Right.
I go to a game and I'm like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't seem to know what this pass is for, what this pass is for, or what this pass is for.
Right. Yeah. And
They
I mean, that's a
no
whole
clue.
other,
No clue.
and it's tough. I think um, a lot of people on the outside don't necessarily realize like, the staffing challenges because a lot of them are third party. They might be temp
Exactly.
workers,
Yeah.
and to the guest, you are a representative of that brand, right? You're you know, representing that team. But to the team, they say, oh, well, it's this other brand and we don't have control, but you have to have control. And I think that a lot of pro teams, they invest a lot in training. They pay for their third parties to come in and get trained. We actually do a lot of customer service training. We work with teams around the country on integrated training to really amplify that and say, hey, how are you thinking about it? And how do you bring that to life? Because being on cell phones means that you're not engaged, right? If you have a staff member on their phone, they're missing security risks, they're missing the opportunity to assist guests. Having people who are uneducated in it can be a real friction point. And to your point, if you walk in and ask someone something they don't know the answer, now it just made your experience less ideal because you have to go find someone else, right? And so how do they handle that if they don't know the answer? Are they walking you to get an answer? Are they gesturing with their hands, or are they pointing? Are they just kind of giving you a I don't know look? all of those things can factor in again to the guest's overall experience. And, you're leaving dollars on the table if you're not executing at a high level.
Yeah. So do smaller schools or teams with, limited budgets still have ways to meaningfully improve their fan experience? Because I think everybody's always like, oh, I don't have enough money to do this, or I don't have enough money to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I do know. Like I said, I've started in minor league baseball. I've worked through collegiate athletics. Like I totally get the mindset of do more with less. And you got to be smarter about how you do it, right? It's not just spending money on things. It's about being intentional and getting the right people who believe in a service mindset and that service culture and who walk the talk. And so taking a look at how well your staff demonstrates that, your full-time staff, right? That's a huge part of it too, because it's not spending more. It's just doing things differently to represent the values you believe in. Because
Yeah.
if the leadership aren't doing those, said, like we'll use my system just as an example. We have a lot of minor league clients, and they find it to be a very worthwhile investment, even if it's just a few $1,000s, right? Because they're able to get data, they're able to act on it, but they're also growing their database of people they can market. And many of them, when retargeting the people who have opted in, they more than make up for the revenue that they spend on the program just by selling tickets alone. That doesn't even
Ah,
count their incremental revenue, right? So like all of a sudden, it tends to be about 40% new to their database that they're able to capture in game, which is huge, right? Like you want to know all
yes.
those people who come with someone else.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden you have this pretty robust data set that's very different than your post game survey, right? Like it's getting you different information. There's more you can leverage. But with that, yeah, no, even if you have a small budget, there's definitely ways that you should be investing in the fan experience. And again, it's even just thinking, do I train the people correctly? Do I have the right culture in place? Like, do we have values that they can get behind and a clearly defined expectation for what our service experience should be? And oftentimes the answer is no, especially in college, right? They haven't really thought of that. They've focused on the student athlete experience. They've focused on some of the other components, but it's,
They focus on ticket sales. I mean, I'm just in general. How many tickets did you sell? That seems to be their thing.
yeah. And there's other metrics, right? That they'll, colleges especially are going to want to start to look at, and you're already paying for, the the people to be there, the staff to scan tickets. They can absolutely smile and say hello. And that makes a huge difference, right? Like at retail, making sure you thank every guest on exit. This is one of the things that we see a ton across all leagues and levels is the departure moment. You may not notice it's not there, but do you have staff in place saying, thanks for coming, have a great night? It's that simple. But more often than not, the staff have rolled it in, they've clocked out, they're not there. And so fans just leave. They can go from their seat to their car and just spent $400 and not a single person says thank you or have a good night. And that is a real miss, right? It's not something that the fan goes, no one said thank you. No one said goodbye to me. But once it gets there, all of a sudden they feel a whole lot better, win or lose, about the experience. And that doesn't really cost any more money. That's just an intentionality thing. Because if at the very least you've got security personnel stationed at the doors making sure no one's bringing alcohol out, they
Right.
just should smile and say, thanks for coming, have a good night, throw away your beer now, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah. So looking forward, how do you see like the Gen Z and younger fans changing the way sports organizations need to think about engagement?
Yeah, that is a $1 million question. What we know about Gen Z, right, is that they're looking for a different kind of experience. Social interaction is important to them, but they're very tethered to their devices in many cases. So, you look at what the Clippers are doing, and Steve Ballmer's mindset is like, no one should have a phone in their hand because I want them focusing on the court. Great idea, great concept. We want everyone to be present and in the moment, but we also know that for that younger generation, being connected and sharing what they're seeing and videoing all of it makes it a huge difference for their experience. I mean, I don't know if you saw the picture, but right when Michael Jordan made his shot and everyone's hands are up in the air, and then when LeBron made his iconic shot and everyone's hands are on their phones taking a video of him making his shot,
Mhm.
that I think exemplifies the difference, right? How
Right.
people are choosing to engage and participate. And so recognizing that, experience is going to look different and there are going to be different standards. However, I think there's still some stuff that needs to shake out.
Yeah. So what's the one underrated thing teams could do today to make fans happier at games?
I think going back to the service experience, making sure your staff are saying thank you, are smiling,
Hmm.
are at the end of the night, again, saying thank you, have a good night and showing gratitude. I think that that gratitude goes a long way. I mean, if you were to go somewhere and spend $400 at a store and
Hmm.
walk out and no one said thank you, how would you feel? Or even put it a different way, what would your service expectation be if you just went to a store and spent $400 or $500? What would you expect them to do? And a game is no different, right? Like,
Right.
but oftentimes because of the volume of people, it's not thought to be as personalized. So the more you can personalize it, the more you can show gratitude, the more you can, invest in your people to deliver the experience that represents your brand, the better everything is going to start to be.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to ask you one open-ended question. Okay, we've talked about a lot of different things. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think that would be beneficial to an athletics director, to an owner of a team, anybody who's leading somewhere where they are having customers in at an event, okay, any event really. Is there anything we didn't talk about that,
You know, One of the big things that we always talk about is how you use data transparently and empower people with it to make decisions in their own spaces. And what we see a lot of is data lives with the BI team or the analytics team instead of each department being held accountable. And so the philosophy behind the way our system is set up is yes, it comes in real time, but that everyone has access to see the data across the event so that they can go in and say, wow, I'm scoring lower than some of the other groups, or this event XYZ happened. Here's how I am going to change it and come to the table with ideas. Data can be used in a way that is very scary for people who do events because they are being told what the data said. Hey, you didn't meet this, you didn't do that. So it's sort of like a power tool in a bad way, right? Like, so
yeah,
I
negative?
have the data, so I have the power. We've really tried to flip that script and say, okay, you look at the data. It's a very easy to use platform. Anyone who, looks at it goes, oh, I get this. I get what I need to do. And leadership, thinking about data that way, putting it in the hands of the people doing the events and making that the expectation of how do we get better collectively is proving to be very, very effective, even with third parties. Like there's still a lot of ours versus yours with third party relationships and vendors, but we've found that the teams that really open it up and say, hey, you go in, log in, see how you're doing, and then you tell us how to get better. It's led to some RFPs and they've made changes. It's led to some improved relationships because of the data and the transparency. So, as leaders are looking at this, you need to have accurate data, but you also need to have data in a fashion that the people who are doing the events can access, not just being told from BI and analytics people this or that, because sometimes those folks, and again, love data here, but they don't always know what an event entails. They don't know what it's like to get there at 4 a.m. for setup and be there until 11 p.m. when the game's done, right? Like there can be incredibly long days. And I think that creating that collaboration and empowering people with data is a very, very impactful way that isn't happening regularly. So just as you think about your move forward, listening to your people, setting a clear vision for where you want them to go, what the values and standards of the department are, and then getting them engaged with how you get there is very impactful, and can lead to some really cool buy-in that maybe wouldn't come if it's just top-down communication. But also, I'd say walk the talk, right? Like as you're looking at the data and the numbers, be open to hearing it because there might be things that aren't fun to hear. They're not easy to hear,
Right.
but
Yeah.
knowing that that's real. And if you want to get better, it's not just what you're getting texts from the people or, knee jerk reactions of, gosh, my friends who were at the game, they said this. Start to look more holistically, start to look more broadly at what are your different segments thinking? What are the pain points? Where do you prioritize? And, you know, making more strategic decisions instead of just the big flashy things. Some of the most important things aren't big and flashy, but they're critical, right? You can do big and flashy things, but it's like the lipstick on a pig thing. And
Yeah.
I don't love that analogy, but it's really, you can dress it up. But if fundamentally you don't have a good staff, you don't have a good set of values that you live by, you don't have good execution, and your facilities really are lacking in the core areas, the biggest technology investments aren't necessarily going to make that a better experience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So now, Erin, how does somebody get a hold of you? And I mean, how much does it cost for your product? Or maybe do you not want to talk about that? I mean, I don't know. Or is it just depend? I mean, how does somebody get a hold of you and how do they get your product?
Yeah, no, great question. So evolvedteam.com, EVOLVED team.com is our website. My email is Erin, ERIN at evolvedteam.com. Feel free to reach out. Would love to share more. But in terms of pricing, I mean, it varies because we create a program that you need, right? So it's not a buy this subscription, buy this plan. We would say, okay, you want to look at football, men's and women's basketball, and let's throw in baseball. Here's kind of the ratio of events. By the way, you don't need to survey every event. I think that's the biggest misnomer out there. You do
Okay.
not need to do it every event. We actually recommend against it, except for football, because you have so few games. But there's survey atrophy is very real. And so you can get the same quality of data if you get a good response rate on much fewer games. So we work with the teams and figure it out. But we have some teams that are, a couple $1,000s, and it can scale all the way up to, six figures and everything in between. But we have very affordable options because coming from the college space, I think that, my why for starting this is how do we get better? Because if we as an organization and industry don't create an experience that guests want to come to your earlier question, they will stay on the couch. They will watch it on TV. They will
Yeah.
watch it on their phone. And we're all of a sudden not going to have this really cool in real life experience. So that's really, I guess, should have started with that. But that's why I started this company, because I wanted to make sure that we could create the best in-game experience possible. And so what we focus on are the analytics, which is the audits and the guest assessment, and then the training. So how do we actually go in, train, and create custom? And when you kind of bundle those different things, each package looks different. But yeah, we have rarely had teams not move forward because of price. It's usually they don't move forward because of buy-in, right? Like they don't think it's
Yeah.
needed to invest.
That's how could you not see that it's needed though?
Well, we don't judge about that. We just we're always here when teams do want to move forward. I think that's important though. I learned really early on, like I'm not going to go try and sell someone who doesn't buy in.
Yeah.
Um, but multiple times we've had teams who initially said no, but they had a champion who really did believe in it, and a couple of years later they came back and were like, "We're ready now. Like I've gotten the buy-in." And we have many teams who have been with us since 2018 because they see the value and they're able to really make it a core part of how they make business decisions and enhance and optimize their experience. Like, as I know we're wrapping up, but a side note, you can use this or throw it away, but we just had one of our teams who's been with us for, I think this is their 6th season, tell us they got rid of their drum line because the scores over 2 years just weren't netting out. Like they tried a bunch of different things and they like, just the expense we're investing in this group is showing us that it's not worth it. And without having this data, we wouldn't have known that. We would have probably kept doing it because someone higher up liked it, but our fans really don't. And so it can really be helpful once you start to look at the data as it's not an attack, but it's a tool for us to be better. And, with that in mind, I think that that's a great approach for many athletic directors to think about is how do we get better? And do we have the right tools to see into it that, really give us a full lens of what we're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think because of the House settlement on July 1 and the intense pressure on all athletic directors to increase revenue, what's a better way to increase revenue at every event that you're already having?
Right.
If you could even increase it by 10%, I mean, it's well worth the investment, I would think.
And many folks, I think, don't see all that they're leaving on the table by not delivering a great experience. I think that's one of the, back to your other question, one of the most overlooked pieces is you always think about what's a new revenue stream instead of just how do we amplify the streams that already exist and what are we leaving on the table by not doing our part. I would also, we didn't talk too much on this, but in terms of revenue, rate cards a huge one too, sponsorship and how you are monetizing your assets. there's a lot of optimization that you can do once you know what your fans like the most. Which assets or components. Is it the free stuff? Is it the mascot? How about the MC? Like, let's look at how those are scored and rated. And then you should go back and take a look at your rate card and see, are you selling those for less than they're worth? Is your top revenue asset the same thing that the fans care about the most? Or did you throw a logo on something for a very small amount of money that really should be sold at a higher level? So minimizing, we call it yard sale PAs, right? Like the ones that are just noise, and actually putting monetization value in the right places can really help make you have a smarter, more enjoyable show and entertainment experience with less clutter, right? With less kind of noise from sponsors who aren't paying what they should be to be in your show.
Well, what if they aren't paying what they should be and they've already entered into a long-term deal?
Well, you cut your losses there and you focus on your renewals. And when you renew and when you go to market for the other, at least you don't make that same mistake.
Right. So you could see a return on an investment for a sponsor, it sounds like, based on the data. Is that what you're telling me?
So let's say, a lot of teams don't necessarily have a sponsor on their mascot, but the mascot tends to be one of the highest rated entertainment components. So how do you sponsor the mascot? How do you make sure that the mascot is wearing a logo jersey? How do you make sure the mascot is featured in certain components, right? Or your dance team, which in college has historically not been sponsored, but in the pro is always sponsored. Like those performance teams often have sponsors. So are you looking at the brand components that you have in a smart way versus saying, well, we've got 15, 30-second spots that we could sell in game, because nobody hears the 30-second spot or the 15-second PA read, right? It often doesn't come across as well, and it's not enjoyable for your fans. So how do you minimize that and then instead drive your revenue in ways that you can justify and say, yep, like you're investing in the PA announcer or this moment in the game in a way that, our fans rate at the highest. There's high visibility, there's high recall and recognition, which is what sponsors want. But rate cards historically in college haven't always been derived off that.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Well, okay. Well, I really appreciate you being on my podcast, Erin. I've been wanting to have you on for a long time, ever since I met you, actually.
I
So,
appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
oh, you're welcome. All right, so that's a wrap for today's episode of Born to be a Sports Agent. If you like what you heard, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And hey, if you've got a friend, an athletics director, an owner of a team, a coach, or an athlete who could use this info, share it with them. And if you ever find yourself needing straight up legal help in the sports world, I'm just a call away. The link is in the show notes. Catch you next time.